Chris, it's great to see you. How was everything on your trip here to T-Town last week?
Oh, it was great. It's always good to be in Tuscaloosa, and it was pretty hot for early June, but I love being around the program. And it's hard to believe that Nick's been there since 2007. But every time you come there, and there's always a lot of turnover on the staff, but the one constant clearly is him. So yeah, always fun to be there. Hard to believe that we're going on almost 2 decades that he's been the head football coach at Alabama.
Yet still, his attention to detail is just the same as if he just took the job. He always talks about how every new year is like a rebuilding job, like he's starting fresh once again. And did you get that feeling once again when you got to see him here this past month?
Oh, yeah, I think he's as challenged as he's been. I mean, I joke around a lot of time, Rogers, that he's had the audacity not to win a national title now for 2 straight years. Can you imagine that? And, of course, I'm being facetious when I say that. But he's got 2 coordinators. He hasn't had a new defensive coordinator for a while. And Pete Golding leaves to go to Ole Miss. Kevin Steele's in there, and Kevin's been with Nick 3 different times now. They know each other. He brings in Tommy Reese, one of the younger OCs around college football. Very bright guy. I had a chance to speak with him and talk with him a little bit. I think the offense is going to look a little bit different under him. And yet they've still recruited and developed football players as well as anybody, maybe outside Georgia the last couple of years. I think Georgia probably is in that pole position right now, but still Alabama's right up there. And I think Nick knows that, with change and when you you have a new quarterback situation, everyone's going to talk about that. But I think it's much more than that. They want to be able to line up in the offensive line and dictate a little bit better what they're going to do on offense, i.e. run the ball, throw it over people's head, protect better when they need to throw the ball down the field. And on defense, I think that one of the big priorities is going to be creating more negative plays, forcing turnovers, getting sacks, forcing quarterbacks into mistakes. Bama was not really good. Or I should say good. They were not very productive last year when it came to forcing other teams to turn the football over. And when you think of Bama's best defenses, they were always outstanding at that. So I think under Kevin Steele this year, that will be a huge priority.
Sticking with the coordinators for just a moment, you've gotten to see Kevin Steele throughout the years. And as you mentioned, this is now his 3rd time being on staff with Coach Saban here at Alabama. What makes Kevin Steele different right now versus, say, in the years past? How has he continued to improve as a coach, and what may it look like for him this season with Alabama?
Kevin's in his 60s, and yet he's continued to evolve and adapt. Some guys, when they have coached as long as Kevin has, they're just not able to do that. He's coached at so many different places under so many legendary coaches, different systems, coaches with different approaches. He's been in the SEC. He's recruited in the SEC forever. When Nick was looking for a DC and Golding went to Ole Miss, I always felt like Kevin Steele would be right there at the top of the list. And, there's a familiarity between those two. He knows the defense. He understands what Nick wants, how he wants his defense run, how he wants it taught. I think that's the thing that we probably, all of us, lose sight of sometimes is coaches coming in have to be able to teach it the right way, teach it the way Nick Saban wants it taught. And I know for a fact that Kevin still knows how Nick Saban wants it taught. But I think Kevin still relates very well to the players. There's a connection there. He can be tough, but I think he's also a guy that they trust and a guy they can come to with different situations. And he's going to be very honest with them. Players at the SEC level, you can't BS them. They want to be told how it is, what they need to do, how they need to improve on, what they need to improve on. And certainly Kevin is that kind of coach.
And then on the offensive side of the ball, a little bit on the younger spectrum, Tommy Reese comes in full of energy from Notre Dame. What'd you like about getting to speak with him about his new opportunity here at Alabama?
Nick talked to several people for that OC job. He talked to Grubb out at Washington. He talked to several guys on staff. I know Derek Dooley was the guy he talked with. Derek has been in the pros and been a head coach, and there were others. I mean, he had a conversation with Dan Mullen when he was out in L.A. doing the TV work with the national championship game. But ultimately, when he sat down with Tommy Reese, he really liked Tommy's vision, what he wanted to do, how he wanted to do it. Nick he's one of the best. When he brings in coaches for interviews, man, you get on that whiteboard and you talk ball, and you talk X's and O's, and you talk situations and strategy and what you're looking for. And he does that with everybody. I know when Tommy got in there, he was really impressive in his interview. They ran the football well at Notre Dame. That's something he deeply believes in. And I know that people say, wait a minute, in this day and age, you better be able to throw it. And that doesn't mean that he doesn't want to throw the ball. But when you can run it and you commit to running the football, it opens up so many other things. And I think when you look at Bama with their stable of running backs, I think they'll be very deep at running back. I think they'll go 3 or 4 deep. They're not going to have a quarterback who's been real experienced throwing the football. So you better be able to rely on your offensive line and your offensive backfield to run the football a little bit and not put a lot of pressure on those guys.
Again, you were in town to take a look at the camp that Coach Saban ran, not necessarily for the high school prospects, but for the youth that are maybe age 13 and below. It was just, what were your takeaways of getting that inside peek to a very, again, detail-oriented camp that Coach Saban ran here in Tuscaloosa?
Number one, you couldn't tell a difference whether he was conducting his own practice or it was a high school camp with 17 and 16-year-olds or 8, 9, 10, 11-year-olds, because it's the same Nick Saban. Nothing changes. I mean, his intensity, his passion, the way he teaches, how meticulous he is. I mean, he started that day with a staff meeting like they do every day about 7 in the morning. And they handed out an 11-page packet about the camp, the way he wanted it run. He was very detailed in what he wanted to see and what he didn't want to see. Tommy Reese is in the room. Kevin Steele's in the room. The whole staff, Jeff Allen, his trainer, every year he's been there, they're in the room, and he's going over what he wants to see. And I think the thing that stuck with me in that meeting is he says, listen, we're going to have to be patient. A lot of these kids are going to have a hard time focusing, but we want to teach, and we want to do it in such a way that these kids, he said, the most important thing about today is that these kids walk away and that they like football, because most kids who don't play football or quit playing have a bad experience somewhere along the way with a bad coach or a coach who doesn't do it the right way or is not a teacher. He said, we want to make sure today that we're heavy on teaching and instructing. And when these kids leave later this afternoon, they say, you know what? Football is something I want to continue. It's a game I want to continue playing. And I think that was, as they wrapped up that meeting, what sort of jumped out to me is that, he's serious when he says, hey, I want to grow the game. We want to promote the game. The game in some quarters is under attack. Let's do everything we can, our part, to make sure that's not the case.
Again, a great piece by Chris on ESPN.com, taking that inside look at the youth football camp for Coach Saban here in Tuscaloosa. And Chris, I'll let you go on this. So last week we got to learn the 8-game schedule will still be in place for the 2024 season. The Crimson Tide will continue to play Auburn, still getting that matchup with Tennessee and Knoxville. And then how about the Georgia Bulldogs back on the schedule? Could that be the first of maybe 3 meetings upcoming in 2024 between Alabama and Georgia? What do you think of the 8-game schedule for Alabama?
Well, as a football junkie, I love it. And I don't know how much coaches around the conference, Nick Saban and Kirby Smart, some of these guys, when they look at who all they got to play. But Alabama's got a tough schedule. When you factor in they play at Wisconsin the second week of the season that year, Georgia plays in Tuscaloosa. And listen, they got to go to Tennessee, to Oklahoma, and to LSU. And remember, Nick a few weeks ago said, listen, I don't know that I'm on board with a 9-game schedule if we got to play, if our permanent foes are Auburn, LSU, and Tennessee. Well, you look at 24 now, I'm not so sure that what they got in their 24 schedule was not harder than that, because I don't think he was banking on Georgia being on the schedule. But no, I'm glad to see the 2 juggernauts in the league playing in the regular season. I think this is only the fifth time in the last 2 decades. I think fans want to see more games within the league against the best teams. They want to see teams play more often. And the 24 season, Roger, is not going to be for the faint of heart for fans or coaches or staff members, because I don't really see what I would call any easy schedules that year.
It's going to be exciting, as well as the 2023 season that's just around the corner, and Chris Lowe will be covering it for ESPN. And Chris, thank you so much for your time this week with us here on the Crimson Tide Sports Network, and look forward to talking to you again down the road. Thank you.
Yeah, same here. Thanks for having me, guys.